Good afternoon. Thanks for joining with us again. And we're back this week with another episode of Christian Conversion Chats. This week we have another member of Arnott Gospel Hall of Assembly who joined more recently. Welcome, Carol Notman. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so I'd just like to start by asking about your family background from your kind of early years. Do you have any brothers and sisters? Um, about your parents and so on?
Okay, so I'm an Edinburgh girl, born and brought up in Edinburgh, and I have an older sister, Jennifer, Jennifer, and I a twin brother, Richard, and obviously my parents. And yeah, born and brought up in the 70s, so yes, that does show my age. Um, so it was a typical 70s, 80s growing up in Edinburgh. Um, but yes, I had a great time. We did. My family were Christians. I've never not known a time that I've not known about God and what the Lord Jesus has done for me, because that was just drilled into me from when I was from a child. We went along to church every week. We never thought about it. That was something that you just did because you love the Lord Jesus, and He tells us to that we've got to remember Him, and that's one way we can remember Him is by going to the church. And so yeah, that's sort of like the my family background, my brother and sister and parents.
Uh-huh. And so you understood then the gospel message from a kind of early age, the gospel message that we need to be saved, we need to trust in the Lord Jesus for salvation.
Yes. Yes, I actually got saved as a child at the age of 7. Um, Now, I'm not going to turn around and say that at the age of 7, I understood everything about what was going on, what was in the Bible. Absolutely not. You don't. I'm still learning, and I'm more than 7. But it was one of those ones where at the age of 7, my brother, we were up at my grandparents'. Adored my grandparents. We were up there for the holidays, Easter holidays. And one Sunday after the meeting, we came home, we were having lunch, and my brother announced that he had given his heart to the Lord Jesus. So there was great rejoicing in the house at that time. And I'm not going to lie and say that I was not a little bit miffed, because he was getting all the attention. He had done something. Now, I knew about the Lord Jesus, but I knew that he had done something that I hadn't done. Um, and I went, so initially I was miffed, quite
Mm-hmm.
miffed. He was getting all the attention. But then as time went on, as the days went on, I realized, wait a minute. Now, in the uh, having grown up, knowing the Lord Jesus, and knowing that now, as I said, I didn't know everything, but I knew that one day the Lord Jesus was coming back for those who love him and those who have asked him into their heart. And I realized that my sister had given her heart to the Lord, my brother had given her heart to the Lord, my parents, obviously, my grandparents. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, wait a minute, if the Lord was to come back just now, I'm the only one in my family that won't go to heaven to be with the Lord. And that was quite a scary thought, that I would be the only one. So like, is there a very like typical Christian saying, being left behind?
Mm-hmm.
But it was when I was that age, it was a very real thought. I was like, I will be left behind. They've all done something that I haven't done. So got over the myth that my brother was getting all the attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, it was the following Sunday. Now, can I just clarify? You do not need to wait, to be honest, for it to be on a Sunday. You do not need to be at church. You can ask the Lord Jesus to come into your heart at any point. But for me, my story was I actually waited to the next Sunday. So the following Sunday, I also asked the Lord Jesus to come into my heart, and told everyone when I got home from church. And was there fireworks? No, there wasn't any fireworks. But I do know, didn't know back then, but I do know now, there was rejoicing in my family kitchen, well, my grandparents' kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
but there was also rejoicing in heaven too. So although there wasn't any fireworks, I do know that the angels in heaven were rejoicing just as well as my parents and my grandparents were rejoicing that I had given my heart to Jesus too.
So it wasn't like particularly related to who was preaching that Sunday or anything. Or...
No, no, it was probably more because of because my brother had given his heart to the Lord Jesus. I realized he had made a step. He had done something that I hadn't done. Because just going along to church, just going to church and being, your family's going to church, that doesn't make you a Christian. That doesn't mean that if the Lord was to come back, that you would go because your parents were Christians. You need to make sure that you yourself have actually got that personal relationship. And I realized, and although I was 7, and as I said before, I did not know everything that was, because the Bible is quite a complicated book, and at the age of 7, you don't know. But there's certain truths. Don't lie. Don't have anyone say, "Oh, you're 7 years old. You don't understand." Children do understand about the fact that they've done bad. Because again, you could turn around and say, "I was 7 years old." I'll be the first to admit I grew up in a Christian um, household. So, yeah, I hadn't done anything really, really bad, but I still sinned.
Mhm.
Because you think about it, if you're a parent, you teach your child to walk, you teach your child to eat, you teach your child to talk, but you never teach your child to have a temper tantrum. That comes naturally because that's within. We're all born. The Bible tells us that we're all born with sin. So although I was only 7 years old, and I didn't know everything that I do now, and I've still got a lot to learn. Um, I still knew that I had done bad. I hadn't done anything horrific, but I had sin in my life. Hey, the fact that I was miffed at my brother, that in itself was sin. Um, so yeah, so at the age of 7, children can understand that they've done wrong and that they need to ask God for their forgiveness.
Mhm. Okay, so you were saved age 7. At this
Mhm.
point, your other siblings are saved as well. Um,
Yep.
so I, I guess that's quite a kind of young age because you mentioned that you weren't particularly rebellious or anything. So after that point, did you notice like a particular kind of change in your life, or do you remember telling anyone about it at school or anything like this?
Not really. No, I don't remember life continued on. As I said, there was like no fireworks, but I knew that I had made that commitment to God. Um, and probably the next change would be because, as I said previously, the church that we went to at that point didn't have a Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact, my brother was the youngest. Can I point out he was 11 minutes younger than me? But those 11 minutes are important. So there was my brother and I and my sister, and then the next person that was closest to our age was our parents. So the church that we went to had very few young people. There was nothing. In fact, to be quite honest, I actually thought there was hardly any young Scottish Christian people around. But I moved church when about the age of 15, my parents um, started going to the gospel of a Southfield Evangelical Church in Edinburgh. It's no longer there anymore, but it had an amazing made an amazing difference in my life. So by the age of 15, all of a sudden we went to this church where there was lots of young people
Mm-hmm.
and absolutely loved it. And I would say at that point was probably when my Christian life really did start to flourish and to change. Um, so yeah, probably been about so it was probably quite, I just went along. Don't tell me, I don't, there's no children absolutely adore going to an hour-long service where they've got to stay quiet and they don't understand a word of what's been said because it's for adults.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whereas, and if they do tell you that they loved it, I don't think they're telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't call anyone a liar. Um, but having been through that situation myself and then so I never went to Sunday school until I was 15 years old, and that was so I can actually remember. So although I knew all the stories, I can remember actually hearing them told to children and the stories coming alive, because it was actually designed, you were bringing the characters alive. I can remember hearing them for the first time when I was 15 years old and absolutely loving it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're 15 years old. You moved to a church, more young people, children
Mhm.
there, but perhaps a kind of sort of more focused kind of youth sort of work there. Um, so did that kind of really encourage you in terms of taking the next steps, next kind of milestones on the Christian pathway? Did you
Oh,
get
absolutely.
baptized at that time, or did you get baptized later? Or?
So no, I didn't. I did get baptized later, but not at this point. So initially, for my baptism, so we'll go back to my childhood, because what my parents believed at the time. Now, whether they would, I think I would be fairly correct in assuming that they would do something different now if they were starting over again. But at the age of 80, they're not going to start over again. Um, But I was initially, the baptism I had would have been what you'd called household baptism. So I was baptized as a baby. I was submerged. It wasn't a sprinkling like they do in the church. I was submerged as a tiny little baby, and it was under the consideration. It was household baptism where your parents were committing to bring you up in the Christian faith. So my parents wouldn't ascribe to that now, but that's what they ascribed to back
Yeah, yeah,
more than 50 years ago, shall we say. Um, so yeah, so that was my first baptism, but my second baptism didn't come till way later.
yeah. And just to be clear, that first sort of baptism, as you call it, that infant baptism, but that didn't save you.
No, but then baptism doesn't save you, and
Mm.
baptism does not make the way to heaven, as you'll find is because I can tell you now, I'm going to meet the thief on the cross. And there's no way that the thief on the cross, who was beside the Lord Jesus when he took the punishment for all the bad things that I did, there's no way he was baptized before he got to heaven. Because there wasn't any time, he was already dying while he gave his heart to the Lord Jesus. So baptism doesn't save you. Baptism is what you would is a outward expression that you follow the Lord Jesus. It's not what saves you. So when I was saved was when I was 7 years old, when I asked the Lord Jesus to come into my heart to say sorry for all the bad things that I've done. That's when I got saved, not when I was baptized.
Yeah. So you moved to a civil church that perhaps has a different practice to do with baptism, etc. Um, I think you may be suggesting you didn't get baptized at that time
No.
as a kind of adult,
So as
as a
an
grown up,
adult,
as someone who's saved. That perhaps came a
so
little bit
that
kind of
actually got,
later.
yes, it came after, just after I got married. I got baptized and then joined my husband's church.
So let's not move to that now, and let's just kind of
Exactly.
go
That's
through the order then. Okay, so you're in this new church. You're in your kind of going into your later teens. You're um, encouraged by kind of young people and so on.
yeah.
So what would you say is your next kind of milestones in your kind of life and also your Christian life?
So there's two milestones came very close together. Surprisingly, I actually left school at the age of 16. I remember I had every intentions of going back to school after into fifth year, but I was working with my mum and my sister, and we had a secretarial agency to the general public, and I loved it. And I managed to convince my mum and dad to let me finish school and start working with them. And when I went back to school to tell them hello and goodbye, I can remember everyone being absolutely shocked because everyone would have been absolutely certain that I would be the goody two shoes at school that would have gone on to sixth year and done everything. But so they were amazed that I left school at 16. So I left school, and about the same time, I as when I started working, I also at the summers I actually went on beach missions. That was probably the first kind of instance where you actually went out on a limb. You went just down. The first one I went to was with a couple of friends from Southfield Evangelical Church, and went down to Mablethorpe. And there I met friends that I had for years. But you were there as on a mission. You were, as the heading said, beach missions. You were on the beach all day. You were teaching children and working with the youth. You were then having fun nights with the families in the evenings. So you really learned. There was times when you were called to give your testimony. You were singing in the open airs. You were doing so. There was lots. It was a huge learning curve, and it was absolutely brilliant because you were learning, you were telling people about the Lord Jesus, but you were having great fun while you were doing it. You were in a safe environment with lots of Christians going out, and everyone was having a great time. And for any parents out there with like older teenage children, I really would urge you to actually encourage your children to go on beach missions or any kind of missions camps, as camp leaders and things, because you're telling others, but you're getting such a reward from it as well. There's the amount of things, the experience that you got, and the fun. It was just such a rewarding thing to do, and I loved doing my beach missions. And I did that surprisingly only for about 3 or 4 years. Um, but then that led me on to my next sort of like milestone, because beach missions, really, you can only do that during the summer. And you went away and you stayed in the church hall for a couple of weeks. And so you really can only do that during the summertime. Whereas for the rest of the year, while at Southfield, there was a couple that came and did a holiday club, and they were called Laura and Gordon Burse, and they worked for an organisation called Child Evangelism Fellowship. So Gordon always remembers, he says, the first time he met me, I was 15 years old. So it must have been must have been with CEF a little bit earlier, but I was a giggly little 15-year-old. But I ended up having to choose, because I worked and I only had like 2 weeks during the summer. I couldn't do everything I wanted to do. So I kind of had to decide whether I would go down on beach missions, in which case you're going and you're doing great work for the Lord, but you're going and you're speaking to people that you are possibly never ever going to see again in your life. Or I could stay and work in Edinburgh, and because Laura and Gordon would do it's like holiday clubs in Edinburgh. But the children that you then met, because I did lots of work with Laura and Gordon, they were such a huge influence in my life. And so there'd be holiday clubs. I did camps with them. I did a youth challenge with them. Any Super Saturdays where we got all the children from all, because they had an organized, well, working with CEF, they had about maybe 14 clubs throughout the week. They worked full time. I would help maybe at one of the clubs throughout the week, but you got to know the children. And in the summers, you could help. You could be going to areas in Edinburgh, and I have to admit, they weren't the nicest areas of Edinburgh. Everyone else went off to really exotic places on holiday, and I would go to the worst areas in Edinburgh. And we'd have a box with our choruses, our Bible stories, and we'd have a mat. We'd put the mat down, and all the children would come, and you'd end up singing choruses with them, telling the Bible stories, and you'd maybe do about 4 different areas in a day, and you'd have a 5-day club. So I kind of thought, do I go on beach missions where I go, or do I stay in Edinburgh? In which case, I still have access. I've got a chance to influence and help the children and see the children throughout the rest of the year as well. So I kind of stopped going to beach missions so that I could concentrate and work with Laura and Gordon in at CEF doing the like the holiday clubs.
Uh, so you felt a real kind of calling to the children's work at
Yeah,
that time.
yeah, I love I've got a real love for for the children, and it's just a delight teaching them and telling them the stories of and how they can learn from our the great men and women of the Bible.
So did you just kind of continue with that kind of service, or did you feel God was calling you in a different way, or?
Well, I worked with Laura and Gordon um, for must be about 2015 to about 12, 13 years.
Mhm.
Because they were still around. They were still around because when I did, this is now going into my 20s, which is more years ago than I actually care to remember. But yes, this is now going into my 20s because I was still doing work with Laura and Gordon when I met my boyfriend, now husband,
Mhm.
because he did come on one camp, which I always found quite amusing because when he read the itinerary of what the plans were, declared 10 o'clock bedtime. I'm never going to be able to get to sleep at 10 o'clock. That's ridiculous. And I was like going, you'll see. Because literally you had an itinerary the whole day you were on the go. And we were sitting watching a film at the club when a friend of mine who was also another leader nudged me, and I looked along and there was David fast asleep when so I was like, yes, he's never going to get to sleep before 10 o'clock. He was absolutely exhausted. He wasn't used to working with children.
So before we come onto that kind of part of your
Hmm.
life, then just to kind of circle back a little bit on, so you mentioned you were doing these beach missions. Um, was that kind of a big kind of decision point over doing the beach missions, or working with your friends, these leaders in the church, or was that kind of a big decision point for you, or was it clear what way you should have went there?
It kind of just happened because it was one of those things I got asked, do you want I mean, beach missions was a new thing. I'd never done anything like that before. That was much because that was actually you were traveling down. You weren't in your own environment. So it was in your safe place. And it was the first time I actually went out of my way and kind of took a leap of faith as such because I'd never done anything like it before. But it's so, and it kind of just from that, I'm just one of those people. If somebody suggests I do something and I think, oh, that sounds quite a good idea, I'll try it. Um, and I enjoyed it. But I think this working with the CEF was much more meaningful because you had contact with the children throughout the year. So you were able to influence and help and guide these children. Now, to be fair, I was only maybe a young, late teenager, early 20s at the time. But when you're talking with, you know, the young children and even the teenagers, because you were still able to kind of influence and like share the good news that we had because they were called good news clubs. So yeah, I was, but it wasn't something a big decision because it was just something that led in.
Yeah. So it wasn't at this point then that you had um, maybe God calling you to a certain thing, but perhaps you didn't do it or anything like that.
Well, yes, there is that. It would have, while I was working with CEF, now I did a lot with CEF. I did the camps, children's. I did a couple of courses. In fact, one of the courses I did twice because I went back. One of my younger friends wanted to go on it. She couldn't drive, so I took her. So I ended up doing the course twice. Um, and yeah, at that point, if I hadn't been working in the family business, because working with your mum and your sister, it's challenging enough to get any time off. Never mind. So like even 2 weeks in the summer was challenging because when there's only three of you and one is off, that's quite a lot of the workforce is away. So I did actually, so I was very much conscious that you couldn't just desert the family. Um, but CEF had a course in Kilsimmer run for children's workers, and it was a 3 month course, 3 or 4 month course in Kilsimmer in Switzerland. And if I could have gone on that course, because I did everything else, I did absolutely everything else. But if I could have gone on that course, I would have. I had friends actually say to me, if you were to go on that course, we'd support you. I'd actually help with the payments. But I didn't feel as if I could leave my family business. Whereas if I worked in where I work now, I could take some time off work. I could take unpaid leave and go off and do the course. Um, but at that point, so yeah, my life could have been very different if I had followed the calling that I think God was calling me to be a full-time child missionary. It would have been very different because I wouldn't be sitting in this house because I don't think I would be married to the person I'm married just now because it would have been a complete. We don't know what the um, alternatives would have been, but yeah, if I had followed that calling, then I think my life would have been very, very different.
Yeah, so would you say you have any kind of regrets over that, or do you think ultimately God's will has been done and you've been directed a different way?
Well, so yes, I do regret that I didn't get to Kilt Summer, and I didn't. Well, I did go to Kilt Summer, but I was there as on a holiday, and it's the most beautiful place on earth. Um, although I didn't, although I didn't follow the calling and go in the full-time missionary, I've never not. Um, I would still say I did everything I could. Lots within Edinburgh, and up till recently, I've always been working with children and doing children's work. So so I did, although I didn't actually follow through and go into the full-time missionary, I still did my little bit that I could in teaching the children. But that kind of opportunity passed, and you carry on with what your life is that you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm never going to regret the life that I've got because it's a great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so you mentioned about meeting, being at a camp and David was there. Was it was it through the camps you met David, or
Oh.
what kind of happened from that kind of, I guess, early 20s coming through? You're doing the
So
camp work regularly, etc.
So yeah, yeah, no, for somebody who did so much with children, met somebody who, because David had not done anything um with children. David's not what you'd call a children's worker, but he did come to the camp because they needed a male leader, so he did come to camp. No, I did not meet David through any. Um, I actually met David through friends. We went Southfield, although it had been when I first started going to Southfield, it was amazing. There was about 80 people there. There was lots of young students, and it was great. But then as time got on, students left, families left, and we got to the stage where there was actually not a huge amount of young people. And I tried to keep for about a year, I kept the youth fellowship that they had going. And then we got involved with another church in Edinburgh. Um, and I've just forgotten the name of the church that was but carry on talking, it'll come to me eventually.
Is
Um,
it Carruthers, no?
no, it wasn't Carrubbers. It's down at the bottom, not far from the Botanic Gardens. It starts with a B, and it's not Brunsfield because that's up by the sick kids. Um, but anyway, we got involved with that church, and we then started going to the Gospels. Well, the Gospels, and getting involved with the youth fellowship, and there, and which was great because it was although I was happy to hand over my youth fellowship to another church because I'd much rather see the children, the youth going on rather than just tapering off and losing um, their interest in God. So I was really happy that they were continuing on in this other church. And my friend, there was one Sunday I wasn't out only because I had a abscess in my wisdom tooth and I was in agony. And I was actually off work. My mum and my sister actually told me not to bother coming into work because they could realise how much pain I was in. So they did let me off work, but I had to look after my 2-year-old nephew while I was off sick. And at that time, on the Sunday night, my friend phoned and went, "Oh, you missed you missed a great night, Carol." And Gordon, one of her friends, had a friend with them. And I was like, all right, okay. She says, well, they're coming round for tea on Tuesday night. Do you want to come? And I was like, oh, I don't know because I'm not at work just now because I've got a bit abscess in my wisdom tooth. But my mum's like, Carol, don't worry, just go. Because she knew I was not just skiving. I was in agony. So I have to say, David got the wrong impression of me when we first met because he thought I didn't really speak very much. And as you've all discovered tonight, I actually have no problem speaking. But the night that we first met, I was actually quite quiet because I actually looked like a chipmunk because I had a swollen mouth. So yes, that was met David, I have to admit, and he knows. So I don't mind sharing this with you, everyone, because he does know. My mum, ever so excited at the thought, because I was 25 when I met David. I was, in her eyes, well and truly on the shelf. And so when I got back at night, she was like, "Oh, what was the new fella like?" And my exact words were, "Oh, he was all right. I'm not going to make an effort to carry on seeing him. He was all right. No, he was." so so yeah, it wasn't what you'd call the best of starts, but that always makes a good relationship, I think,
It
because
wasn't love at first sight then.
it wasn't love at first sight. No, I actually thought he was quite arrogant. I did tell him that. Um, and he thought I was quiet. How we ended up married, I have no idea. But yeah, it was so I kept thinking, no, he was all right, a bit arrogant, but I wasn't going to make but he kept hanging around. And it was probably about 6 weeks later, we were at a friend's house and then we were going to a church event, but we were walking towards it, and I ended up at the back with him, and I thought, oh, joy.
Mm.
But as we got chatting, I realised, oh, you're not that bad. And and yeah, but then it got to the stage where after quite a few months, I was like, well, obviously he's no interested. And so I gave myself a talking to that day. There was a crowd of us was going out. We were all meeting up and we were going to go to Gullen Beach. And I gave myself a right talking to saying, right, Carol, he's obviously not interested in you. And as my mum was always pointing out, I am not getting any younger. So I can't wait around forever. So if there's someone else, then I've got to maybe start looking um, at other options.
Mm.
And we all went out to Gullen Beach that night, and we do laugh because I could be married to a doctor because there was a young doctor there who seemed really nice, and that seemed to spur David on because David then asked me out when he realised he had competition. If only I'd known that's what I had to do months earlier. So yeah, so he asked me out. We were at the beach, so it must have been sometime in the summer.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm. And the rest is history when you got together and so on.
the rest was history. Yes, I think we went out for about 5 years and then got engaged.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I got married when I was 30.
So it did. Was there a reason it was 5 years or?
Because now, Gordon, you do know, not everyone else knows my husband. My husband is one who will he doesn't make any decisions lightly. He takes a long time to think about things. I don't. He does. So we're quite a good blend. I always have said I think God has a sense of humor because he's put David and I together.
Uh-huh,
You couldn't
uh-huh.
get two more opposite people that make a perfect pair. Um, but yes, he's one of those ones that likes to make sure everything's, and so he was just taking his time to make sure. And but to be fair, when you are actually considering who you're going to spend the rest of your life with, it is very important to make sure that you actually do um, work well together, and because you are going to spend the rest of your living life together.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier then that um, you got baptized, I guess, as an adult, but the believer's
Yeah.
baptism, and it's taught in the Bible. Um,
Yes,
just before you got married, how did
just
that
after
kind of
we got
come about?
married. Just after we got married, I then, because I think David was wanting to make sure that the occasions were two separate, so it wasn't just immediately afterwards. So, but maybe about a month or two after we got married, I then joined in order for me to join his church and to be able to break bread. I then got baptized.
So we had a different doctrinal belief from the church that you grew up in. You.
Yes, and that's one. Whereas now my parents would definitely believe in believers' baptism nowadays, but I have to respect that that's back 52 years ago. That's what they had like understood. That was their belief back then. It would change now. My dad would not subscribe to it now, but that's what he did then. So you have to respect them. And they did bring us up in knowing that the Lord Jesus, they did their
Yeah, yeah,
job
yeah,
well.
yeah, 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 and the reason for that is was just kind of committing to bring you up and to teach you the
Mhm.
Bible and this kind of thing.
Yeah, and there is the verse in the Bible that says, you and your household, when they saved it. So, but that's not something they would believe back then. But yes, so I did have a believer's baptism when just after I was 30.
Yeah, 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 and that's the teaching and that's what we have at Gospel Hall as well.
Yeah,
That they believed, they were baptized, and then they were added
yeah,
to the company. Yeah, and baptism being that public declaration that you have got saved. You're telling people that you're now following the Lord.
yes.
Yeah. Um. Okay, so you're now married. You and David,
We
op-
are.
opposites attract. You're working together. So, um, you, you then continued to serve the Lord well together, or have you got a? Is there anything particular that stands out in terms of your kind of service together?
Um, our service together, because we actually are very different in how we serve the Lord, but it works well together as such. Um, so currently now, I would be David is. I may be slightly biased when I say this because he is my husband, so I have to kind of say this. But I'm not just saying it because he is my husband. He's a good preacher. He's so he goes and preaches out, and whereas I would say we have an open house for instance on Sunday I'm expecting the whole church to be around, so we open up the house. I like cook for the church to come round. So David would do the preaching, and currently at the moment I'm doing it's like cooking, and then wait for the house and having an open house. And if anybody needs, I'm now coming and helping Ken away with their children's club, the Good News Club, or the GNC. It's not a Good News Club, the GNC on a. I'm so used to saying Good News Club because of my years of CEF work.
That's what it stands for.
I
GNC,
know.
Good News Club. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
So
it's different ministry. There's a public preaching, and then there's kind of working together. Uh,
we
but what?
support one another in what. and what we need to do, we would have each other's back and support one another. So yeah, that's so it works well.
Yeah, yeah. And over the years, you continue with the camps and kind of kids work and youth work
So
and
no,
all the
I've
kind of
not.
churches you've been in over the years? So,
So I've continued with children's work, but not the camps. Um, as such, that was Laura and Gordon actually retired probably when I was about 28 or so, a couple of years before I got married. They retired not from children's work, they retired from CEF and they moved down to Peebles. Um, so probably that opportunity to do camp work kind of it's like fell away with them leaving CEF. But I still did Sunday schools, and a few years ago, just after lockdown in Kelty, we actually had in the church that we were going to then, we had a mission for youths, and which really surprised me when David actually was one of the ones organising, because David's never been one for youth work in the slightest. He would be much more comfortable in a pulpit kind of preaching rather than working hand, having with the youth. But he worked in it and he absolutely loved doing the youth work. We had I would say at one stage throughout the time we've maybe had about over 100 youth. And we're not talking about nice young Christian children here. We're talking children that had never even never opened the Bible before. We had to start off with we were telling them very basic Sunday school lessons with David and Goliath, and they were thinking we were talking about a crane. It's like, no, we're not talking about a crane, David and Goliath. So these were kids that knew absolutely nothing about
mhm.
the Lord Jesus, and a number of them have got saved, and one's been baptized, which was an absolute delight to see and to watch them as they like grow in their faith. Um, so yeah, that's so in a way we both work together doing that.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, we support, but we're a good support for one another.
And it'll be about a year since you've joined us at the Rannoch Gospel Hall.
I bet you
And
it's felt a lot longer for that than for you.
and you've both been a great help, different ways and together. Yeah, and you mentioned the UNC. You've been joining. You've been helping with that and the youth group and the carnival and the fun day and all these things. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, okay then. So just to kind of conclude then, can I just ask you then, just to kind of sum up then, in terms of how would you sum up how the Lord has really helped you in your life and your Christian life and made a difference in your life? Maybe for someone that's watching that's not a Christian.
The thing is, for me, that's quite a challenging um thing to do because I've grown up in the Christian in a Christian kind of household and as such, I've never known what it's like not to be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit like, going back, showing my age when there was a film, The Sliding Doors, where you got this. If anyone's seen the film, it was a case of you had this situation and something happens, somebody misses a train, and then you get the scenario of what the two different scenarios. You don't get that in life. So I don't know what it would have been like if I hadn't grown up in a Christian home. The one thing I do know is that because not through nothing, through absolutely nothing that I have done, I know that one day I'm going to be in this place where there is no darkness, no tears, where the streets are made of gold. There's a mansion getting prepared now. Who all's going to be living in that mansion, whether I have the mansion to myself. There's not an awful lot of details, but there's enough details of of heaven that you get in the Bible, it sounds like an amazing place. And there is absolutely nothing that I have done that I deserve to be there. But I know one day that I am going to be in heaven with the Lord Jesus. And there's nobody in heaven is going to be there because of anything that they've done. Because the only way you can actually get to heaven is if you ask the Lord Jesus to come into your heart. Nobody's going to get in heaven because they say, oh, I did this challenge, I did that challenge, and I managed to do all of this. Nobody can boast about what they did. And do I deserve to be in heaven? No, I don't. Now, I have not done anything really bad in life, but I don't deserve, because the Bible tells us that because of our sin, we deserve to be separated from God. But because he loves us, he sent his son to take the punishment for all the bad things that we've done, so that one day I will be in heaven. So because I've grown up with that from the age of 7, I've known that if anything happens to me, when my grandparents passed away, when my dad was really ill, it was like over a decade ago, and he was spent a week in like the eye intensive care, didn't know if he was going to survive or not. Although it was really difficult, you always had that assurance that, well, if anything happens, I know he's going to be in heaven, and I know one day I'll see him again. And that's a huge comfort to me, that one day I'll see those that I've loved again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thanks very much for joining us, Carol, and sharing your story of how you became a Christian, how you trusted in the Lord Jesus, and the difference Lord Jesus has made in your life as well.
Mm.
And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back next week with another video. Thank you.